Hello everybody and welcome to the ultimate 2022 video game tier list. So this year I reviewed around 50 games for both Game Explain and my own channel. So I've reviewed a lot of games, arguably the most games out of anybody in the world, but we have no proof of that. But there are also games that I played and didn't review, so there's about 80 games in this tier list. Some I finished, some I didn't, but all of these games in this tier list I played enough of to at least give my thoughts on it. So sit back and enjoy this massive, massive tier list. First of all, Dying Light 2, Stay Human. So this was at the start of the year when this came out, and I loved Dying Light 1. And Dying Light 2 basically just did everything Dying Light 1 did, but just did it better. The parkour was better, the combat was better, the quests were probably on par, but the story itself was a lot better than the first one. It's still not like absolutely amazing, but it was still quite a fun narrative. And then, seriously, like, the thing about Dying Light is that it's just fun. You run around a massive open world with this really slick parkour system, which is very, very impressive. And then they added in like a hand glider, which obviously every open world needs. And the hand glider in this game is actually really good because you can scale to the very top of buildings because you have a grappling hook as well, which is also very good. Scale to the top of the buildings. And then, you know, just decide, I am going to jump off this. And then when you jump off it, take out your hand glider. And then there's also vents around the world that lift you up into the air. So it is very gamey. It's a very gamey game. But oh my fecking lord, is it fun. I really love this game. Now, it's not like, I wouldn't put it S tier. I'm dancing around A and B tier. But I think I'll give it A tier because of just how fun it is. It's a game, it knows it's a game, and it has no problem showing that it's a game, if you get me. It's not trying to be anything overly fancy. And next on the list, we have Pokemon Legends Arceus. And it actually is apparently officially pronounced Arceus, but then Pokemon Company changed it because arse in like England and Ireland means arse, like an ass. So they changed it to Arceus. But anyway, this was Pokemon's first open world game. And I played maybe 10 or 15 hours of this. This came out during a very busy period for me when I was reviewing loads of games for Game Explain. So I haven't gone back to it. But the start of this game is probably one of the worst starts to a game I've ever played. It's just constantly getting in your way. And the reason why it's such a bad start is because when it actually gives you that half an hour, 45 minutes where it's uninterrupted, the game is just so fun. They just got this loop. They just perfected the loop here. It's simple, it's easy, and it's fun. So you're just running around the world, you see a Pokemon, you throw a ball at them, you catch them. You don't have to go into a battle to catch them, but you just throw it, bam, Pokemon caught, brilliant. And then you're going around and then you see a little item. Oh, I want to pick that up. I'll pick that up. It's real quick. Everything about that loop of running around the world is really, really quick and easy. And it's just fun. Now, the game, when it came out, well, it looks decent. It looks a lot better than Scarlet and Violet because they have more like a stylized visuals to it. Because the sort of realistic, cartoony like style of Scarlet and Violet does not translate as well as the sort of watercolor aesthetic of Legends Arceus. I did enjoy what I played of the story, the whole the sort of the feudal Japan style of when Pokemon first came around and when they figured out they could catch them and stuff. That was actually really interesting. Someday I will go back to this game because I did really enjoy it. It's just it came out at a bad time, but it's definitely, they got the loop really well, but then it felt like everything else that I played was sort of a bit meh. So I think I would put Arceus as a B tier. I think B tier is pretty fair. I don't think it's an A tier because of all the little bits that it gets wrong, or well, a lot of the things that it gets wrong, like that intro. But in general, it's just a fun game to play, and Pokemon's just great, look. So yeah, B tier I think is pretty fair. And next, we have Uncharted Legacy of Thieves Collection. So this is Uncharted 4 and Uncharted Lost Legacy. And I never played Uncharted Lost Legacy before this, but they packaged them together, brought them to the PlayStation 5, and I don't know why they didn't bring the Uncharted collection, the 1, 2, and 3 to the PlayStation 5, but anyway, that would have made a lot more sense. But I reviewed this for Game Explain, and I got a code, I have to say that, because of Sony, and yeah, it's just great. Uncharted 4, absolutely fantastic game. Lost Legacy really surprised me at how much I like it. Chloe and Nadine were like a really good duo, and I like the sort of open sections that Uncharted 4 brought in, and then they kind of made it even bigger in Lost Legacy. And yeah, overall it's just fun. They're really good games. And then they have the 120 FPS mode, which, I mean, is a nice addition. The 60 FPS mode is still where I would find a nice middle ground. I did notice that on the 120 FPS mode, it was actually kind of a bit blurry. But, I mean, still cool to have the option. If these games were brand new, they would probably go into S tier because they are really that good. But because they're old games, I think A tier is pretty solid. Like, they're great ports, upgraded to 60 FPS of fantastic games. And I don't think it was full price either, so we'll give it that. Next, we have Agent Intercept, which is a game that I didn't review, but I played a good bit of it. I got a code for it, and it's this little, like, arcade style, almost like, what do you call them? Not auto runners. You know, like Temple Run. Whatever you call them. But it's really arcadey, and it's basically you are a James Bond type character. You're in this cool vehicle that can fly, it can drive, and it can also go on water. And you're just going through these, like, on rails, that's the word I was looking for. You're just going through these on-rail levels, trying to get a high score. And, yeah, like, it's a very solid game. Like, I think we put it in a B tier. So, arcade again, we have this sort of, like, I would say, like, a roguelike kind of Borderlands style, you know, looter shooter, third person looter shooter kind of game. And it has a fun loop. Again, I think the start of this game, like the opening hour or two, was just kind of, it just didn't let you play the game. It just had so many systems that it tried to teach you. And I just wish it threw me into it. So it was definitely difficult to get into. But once you get into it, it's actually quite fun. I played like maybe 5-6 hours of it. And it has a nice loop of like running through these levels. And sort of like a good risk-reward system of when you get to a checkpoint, you can increase the difficulty. And then the enemies deal more damage, but you have a better chance of getting better loot. And if you die, you lose all your progress. So like, it's a game that like really suits the sort of style I like. And I had fun with it. But I think ultimately, it's a bit unmemorable. The mechanics are solid. The shooting is fine. But the aesthetic just kind of like, it's kind of this, like imagine you were sucked into a game kind of aesthetic. And yeah, it just didn't really inspire much in me. I had fun with the 5-6 hours, but I didn't have any like excuse to go back to it. So like, I'll give it a C tier because it is a solid game. But again, I just think it lacks the sort of personality that these type of games need. And then we have Asterigos, Curse of the Stars. I'm struggling to read the small text. But anyway, we have Asterigos, Curse of the Stars. And this game is like, kind of like a Dark Souls game, a bit. It's definitely easier than Dark Souls, but it has that sort of go into a level, explore these the levels are actually, the level design is really fun. Explore these levels and, you know, do random side quests for NPCs and stuff, and then fight some pretty difficult enemies. I beat the first 2 levels of this game, which I think is like maybe 3-4 hours of the game, and it's solid, very solid game. I really like the aesthetic. Kind of reminds me of like a PS2 era game aesthetic if you kind of HD-ified a PS2 game, so there was a bit of nostalgia there. It really does feel like nostalgic if you have played PS2 games. And the boss fights are a lot easier than Dark Souls, and the whole system is that you have different weapons that you can mix and match. So you have like a main weapon and a side weapon, and they all have different abilities. Pretty solid game from what I've played. I haven't beaten it, so, but like, you know, it's easily a C tier game. Like, there's not really much to say about it, but it's solid, very fun. It just came out during a busy time. I think I bought that game on like a Friday, and then I got God of War Ragnarok like a week or two, or a day or two later. So it just kind of fell to the wayside, which is what happened to a lot of these games that I played. Next, we have Astroneer, which I reviewed for Game Explain on the Switch. I think this was already out. It was already out on PC. And the Switch port was pretty solid. It ran pretty smoothly, and it worked. Like, the controls actually transferred over quite well. Ultimately, I just kind of felt a bit unrewarded playing the game. It's basically, you land on this planet, and your base has oxygen and light, and you just have to basically branch out. It's a survival game. Like, you have to branch out and make sure you're linked up with oxygen and stuff. So there is, like, it is quite tense. Like, it is, like, if you run out of oxygen, you die. But again, ultimately, from what I can remember, I just kind of felt a bit unrewarded. Like, I felt like I wasn't really doing much. And it's kind of all about automating your base so that you have all these, like, you know, you have a hand that will grab your resources from your chest and put them into like a smelter and stuff like that, and then you have another hand, like automatic hand, that grabs it and then puts the refined stuff into a chest. So it's kind of, a lot of it's about automation, which some people like. I know there's games like Factorio and stuff that like people really enjoy, but for me, I didn't really like it. And then the narrative of like the mystery of exploring the levels just kind of, I don't know, I didn't really like it. But yeah, like I think it's a solid game. Maybe on the PC it'd probably be a bit better, but like it's a C tier. There's not really too much too bad about it. Like it's a bit cumbersome and stuff, but I think most survival games are. They're intentionally built that way. So I think it's a C tier. It's a fine game. On PC, I've heard it's pretty fun and it's a lot easier to play. And maybe with a friend or two, I'll get a bit more enjoyment out of it, but single player, no. And here we have the Gotham Knights tier. A tier that I reserved solely for Gotham Knights because that game is shit. However, there was one more game that deserves to go into the Gotham Knights tier, and that is Babylon's Fall. This game, fucking shite. It's just terrible. Look, I played Godfall. I beat Godfall. I found some enjoyment in Godfall. Babylon's Fall I got a code for because I wanted to figure out, is it really that shit? And the answer is yes. Platinum Games are really sort of, I don't know what's going on with them right now. They're not doing very good. But I do not recommend this game. Don't buy it. And also the servers are shutting down. If not, they have already shut down. Even though they said they plan on supporting it for like 3 years. But I mean, fair enough. I understand. The combat system was bad. The graphics were just baffling. It was like they went for this watercolor art style, but it just didn't work. So, you know, Babylon's Fall deserves to be in the bargain bin. Actually, it doesn't even deserve to be in the bargain bin. It deserves to just be in a bin. It's not a good game. Don't buy Gotham Knights. And next we have Vampire the Masquerade Blood Hunt, which is a battle royale game which is set in the Vampire Masquerade, or Vampire the Masquerade series, which I think is part of another series that I can't think of the name of, but it's like an offshoot. And it's this battle royale game where you play as these cool vampires and you have cool abilities. There's like different character classes that have different abilities. What I really liked about this game was how fluid the movement was. You can climb buildings at all times, you can jump around, you can glide. There's cool abilities like there was one where you could go invisible so people couldn't see you, and then there was this tank guy that would grow this armor that would make him really hard to kill. And yeah, it was just fun. It felt different. For me, I enjoy battle royales, but I only enjoyed them so much until all the deaths just kind of wear down on me. Even though I was actually pretty decent at this game when it came out. But in general, a very, very solid battle royale game. I'm not sure if it didn't do anything like too new, but what it did was really solid. So I think it's a B tier. I don't know what the community's like now, but when it first launched the first month, there was loads to do. This launched on PS Plus. I think it's on Epic Game Store as well. So yeah, I would highly recommend this game if there's people still playing it, which is the sad thing for multiplayer games. It's very difficult to have it to hold a captive audience. And next we have Bug Snacks on the Switch. And Bug Snacks is a very interesting game. It's like a little puzzle Pokemon, like you have to collect these Bug Snacks. But it also has sort of like a weird tone to it, like where I would say it's almost like would remind you a bit of BioShock, where there's something not right about it. Well, BioShock, there's definitely not stuff right about it, but yeah, with Bug Snacks, solid game, and this is the Switch port, and it came out with the Isle of Big Snacks, which was all these bigger snacks. And I like how inventive all the different creatures are. Like you have a little strawberry there, you can see him, his name's Strawberry, and he's a little strawberry. And then you have some like cool ones. I'm trying to think, there's one that's like a big pizza, and he's a moth. And then there's like, yeah, there's just loads of different ways, and how you capture them, some of them are really unique. So there was like this little guy that was like a piece of corn, and to capture him, you'd have to get him into his popcorn form. And there's a scorpion that shoots hot sauce. So when you have to get the scorpion to shoot hot sauce onto the popcorn guy, so then, or the corn kernel guy, and then he turn into a big popcorn, and then you capture him. So it definitely has some cool, interesting ideas. It's a fun game. I don't think I'd put it anywhere other than like a C tier. Maybe push it to a B tier. No, I'll put it to a C tier because I remember there were some performance issues on the Switch. So on the PlayStation 5, I'd give it like a B tier, but on the Switch, I'd give it like a C tier. And next we have a bit of a divisive game. We have Callisto Protocol, which Glenn Schofield was at the head of this game, the guy who made Dead Space, or one of the guys that made Dead Space. And yeah, it's like this game had some really... You can see there's a good game there. Like, you can see that there's an 80 or a 90 action horror game there, but instead it's like a, you know, like a 65, 70, because I actually heard, I think it was Gene Park on Twitter said that it's death by 1,000 cuts. So it's like the dodging, how you do the dodging is you dodge with the left and right analog stick, and there's no real skill to it. All you have to do is if an enemy attacks you, you just have to hold left, and then that's them gone. So, or then you dodge them. And it just never felt right. Dodging should be on a button. I don't know why they decided to change it up. There's Arlo in the background if you're curious. And then after that, like the first hour they did like the stupid jump scares, like, you know, someone falling out of a vent or like steam coming out of a pipe as you're walking down a narrow corridor. It just took any horror out of it. Like there was literally like 6 or 7 jump scares in the first maybe hour. And then after that, I was just completely numb to it. So I think Callisto Protocol... I think Callisto Protocol is a very low C tier. It's a good game, but I wouldn't put it any higher than good. And then next of all, we have Chocobo GP, which I was actually very excited for. I love kart racer games, and obviously this is Final Fantasy. Loads of nostalgia for Final Fantasy. And Chocobos, or Chocoboos, whatever way you pronounce it. I know someone's going to complain about my pronunciation, but Chocobos, Chocobos are just cute. And he went around sliding on skateboard or rollerblades. So anyway, the mechanics were pretty solid. It was like a fun kart racer, but it didn't feel 100%. It had some issues where it's almost like it's hard to explain. You just kind of have to play it to realize that it's not Mario Kart, or it's not Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing Transformed, or it's not this, or CTR or something. It just doesn't feel 100%. And then the monetization was a bit weird. Now, like, you had to literally play hours upon hours to unlock, like, Cloud. And I think some of the characters were paywalled as well. I think it was a pretty ropey launch. I actually didn't have access to, like, the Battle Pass because the game just glitched out me, and I still don't have access to the Battle Pass. So, like, yeah, I think I would put this again as a C-tier game. Nothing too offensive about it, but nothing too great either. And then we have Clan O'Connell, which is a Celtic-based, almost like Trine, where you have, it's like a puzzle action platformer. We have 3 characters that all have different abilities, and they're all used to, like, do different things. So, like, I'm pretty sure the rogue, the bow woman, had a double jump, and then one of them had, I think he could spin. There was, like, different abilities and stuff. And in general, it was a fun game. There wasn't anything too offensive to it, but also nothing too amazing about it. So again, it's just a C tier. There's going to be some games that are just going to have to brush through, because there are 80 games on this list. So, and the next one thinking of brushing through was Coromon. This game was like a modern indie take on classic Pokemon. And it looks great. The Coromon designs are really good. But I thought it was too hard. Like, it just felt like I'd get into a battle and then I'd have to walk back to a Poke Center or whatever they were called to heal up. And it was random encounters as well, and random encounters. I understand this is a throwback game, but random encounters shouldn't exist. To be honest, I actually was just very frustrated by this game. So Coromon goes into the D tier. It wasn't great. I know a lot of people like it, but it wasn't for me. And then we have Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion, which is a game that I've put, I think, about 7 hours into, and I fucking love this game. It's so fun. It just... Now, you can see it's a PSP game. It's a remake of a PSP game. Firstly, they made it look great. It doesn't look like a PSP game whatsoever. But its design is very PSP-esque. There's... Everything is, like, instanced missions. So there's no, like, big world. Well, there's, like, you can explore certain areas, but in general, all the areas are little corridors. And you just start missions from menus, and you're in menus, fusing materia, making new equipment. But, like, the combat system is just fun. It's just, like... Excuse me, you have a heavy attack. Or you only have one attack button. But then when you hold L1, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 materia that you can equip that can be different. Some use AP, some use MP. And yeah, it's just fun. And so far, the story is really good. It's a prequel to Final Fantasy VII. You play as Zack. who was Cloud's friend, and Sephiroth is in it, and he's not evil at the time. So it's like almost like an origin story, I guess, so far. But like I genuinely love this game. It's not an S tier, but it's definitely an A tier because the loop is so fun, and I'm doing all the side missions because it's just a nice loop of going in, killing enemies, getting a cutscene, going out, going into the next level with a cutscene, killing enemies, going out. So it's very bite-sized, it's very manageable, very good though. And then next we have Curse to Golf, which is a game that is right up my alley. I love golf and I love roguelikes, so there's no doubt that I would like this game. The golfing mechanics are really solid, and they have this cool card system that is randomized, which sort of gives it like the roguelike vibe. The only thing is that I think it was definitely marketed as a roguelike game, and while it has roguelike elements, like there's no real incentive once you beat the main story to go back. It took me I think 8 hours or something. Now it's very difficult, but it took me 8 hours to beat it, and after that, unless you want to get a high score, there's no point in going back. But the golf mechanics are really solid, so I would recommend playing this game, but don't go into it thinking you're getting like a Binding of Isaac or Crypto the Necrodancer, or a game that you can just constantly go back in and find new secret rooms, new items. It's not that sort of a game, but it's very solid. So I will give it, I think if it was a proper roguelike, because of how fun it is, I would give it an A, but I think it's a B because it sort of fell flat on that stuff. And then we have Destroy All Humans 2 Remastered, and Destroy All Humans 2 Remastered, Destroy All Humans 2 was way better than the first one, but if you played the remaster of the first one, they brought a lot of the elements that were introduced in the second game into the first one, so it doesn't feel like that big of a leap. It's the same sort of loop. You just go into these fun worlds, very caricature. I mean, at some points you might even, I don't know, I'm not sure if I'd call it racist, but there's definitely a lot of stereotypes. But it's a game that couldn't be made nowadays, but it's still quite funny. I like the sort of satire on it. And I said I would love if, when they come out with a new Destroy All Humans, which I hope they do, they made an Ireland level, because I'd love to see their take on Ireland, like leprechauns running around and people just drunk everywhere. I think it'd be very funny. But yeah, this game is once again very solid. It's a really good remake, and even though 1 and 2, the remakes mechanically are pretty much identical now, I think 2 is better because the levels are more diverse, because you're not just in places in America, you're in Japan, you're in England, you're in America, you're in Russia, so there's loads of different places and loads of different takes on it. So yeah, I think this is easily a B tier game because it's just fun. It's simple, like just fun, that's it. And then Dome Keeper is a short game. You basically are in this dome, and there's sort of this risk reward system where you have to dig down and get resources, but you have to bring the resources up to your dome, put them into your like resource gathering machine, so then you can upgrade your dome. But there's this time limit where after say 2 minutes or a minute, I don't know what the time limit is, people attack your dome, these aliens attack your dome, so you have to get in, and then it's almost like a little, like you have this little gun on your dome that you have to shoot. And it's a really fun game, but I think for the price, I think it was nearly €20. I got a code for it, but I think it's nearly €20. I got like, 5 or 6 hours of enjoyment out of it, and then that was it. So at full price, I wouldn't recommend it, but like it is a fun game. So if you do think you'd like the look of it and don't mind a shorter experience, then it's definitely good. I think I'll put it in a C tier. I think if it had a bit more content, it would be a B tier, but C tier. And next we have Dragon Quest Treasures, which is a game, once again, I got a code for. And this game is just really fun. It does what Arceus did and has that sort of loop. You run around this open world as, what's Eric is his name from Dragon Quest 11. And he's a kid. And it has this almost like Ni no Kuni-esque battle system where you capture the many monsters of Dragon Quest, which is great because, I mean, there's some very iconic characters or like monsters in it. And then it has this like action combat where your party of Dragon Quest monsters attack automatically. And then they have a few like active abilities that you can like activate. And it just does what Legends Arceus did, where it's like fun to run around the world, collect resources, capture things, and it's all very seamless. Now, I only played a few hours of this game, but so far it's very solid. I don't think I could put it in the B tier because I haven't played enough of it, because it might wear thin after a while. But like, if you like Dragon Quest and you like that sort of Legends Arceus or Scarlet and Violet loop, then this game is very, very fun. Dying Light is in there twice. So we'll just ignore Dying Light. Can I like pop that back here? I can, okay. Elden Ring. Do I have to explain myself? Do I have to explain myself? I don't think so. Elden Ring is one of the greatest games ever made. If not... Is it? Is it the greatest game ever made? It's definitely up there. I mean, Majora's Mask is my favorite game, but that's obviously a lot of nostalgia. It is still a very good game, but there's a lot of nostalgia there. But Elden Ring is just amazing. It's as simple as that. And just as I keep going back to it, you know, start a new character, play for 15, 20 hours, just to mess around with a new build. And there's just so many builds that you can do. And now I'm playing it on my Steam Deck. Oh, this is just, it's just one of them games that come around once every 5 years. Like say, which is actually, yeah, no, because you have Breath of the Wild came out 5 years ago. You have this that came out 5 years after it. Like, these are once in a generation type of games that, I mean, if someone tells me... Now, one thing I will say about Elden Ring, and why I think it's so popular, is that it gave the FromSoft formula a bit of an adaptive difficulty. Where in the previous games you could, say, do magic. And with magic, you know, it does make the game easier. So it is like sort of an adaptive difficulty. But in Elden Ring, if you're struggling at a boss, like you can fight one boss at level 5, or you can fight that same boss at level 100 if you just go off and do stuff. So there is, for your more casual people, there's sort of a difficult, like an adaptive difficulty that they can affect there, which is really good. And I think that's why it appealed to a wider audience. And then it just showed that From Software are like, they were already masters. Like, I was only saying this to my friend that, like, if there was a Mount Rushmore of games, Miyazaki would be up there now. Because he's been doing it for 14 years now or whatever, making some of the best games ever made, just consistently making some of the best games ever made. Yeah, Elden Ring's S tier. There we go. You're welcome, Alex. I know you're going to dispute that. I'm speaking directly to you right now. It's an S tier. Next we have Elix 2. I played about 5 hours of this game. Me take another sip of water. This is going to be very tough on my throat because I'm literally going to just be talking for ages. I played about 5 hours of this game and it felt like a step back from Elix 1. So these are very AA RPGs. But it just didn't do much to inspire me. I just didn't want to play it. Whereas Elix 1, yeah, there's loads of issues with it, but there was something that kept me coming back. The combat is really janky in both games. But this one just felt like very disjointed from the start. It's almost like I got plopped into a world and everything wasn't properly explained. This is someone who played Elix 1. It was like almost like you're just dropped in the middle of something and there you go. And it just didn't feel very cohesive. Yeah, that's the word. Elix 2 was a D tier game. Evil West, A tier. It's fun. It's like, reminds you of a PS3 era game, but for all the right reasons. The combat system is just fun and meaty and gory. The upgrade system is actually very good. There's no just, oh, well, there is a few, like, 20% extra health. But all the abilities just, they unlock new combos and they just change things up so much. And the setting is so cool. It's like an alternate history where vampires and werewolves exist. And you are part of this agency that works directly with the US government to keep the vampires and werewolves and stuff at bay. Really, really fun. A tier. There you go. Frogun, I think I'd put that in D tier because I really like the graphics. It almost was it was almost maybe a B tier, but when you get to the last maybe 30% of the game, the mechanics really fall. Like, they just fall flat. Like, yeah. Maybe a C tier. It's a low C, high D, but I'm not sure. I think I'll leave it in D tier because it was frustrating. Sonic Frontiers, A or B tier? I think it's a B tier. Or is it an A tier? I think it's a B tier with the potential of being a very high A tier. If they just fix up a few issues with it, I think this game could easily be like Sonic Frontiers 2 should be a very, very good game. There was just a few baffling decisions, like the economy was all off. I had like 200 skill points at the end that I just didn't use. Didn't really care for the narrative. And then the cyberspace levels just weren't good. They just didn't feel right. So yeah, B tier. Ghostwire Tokyo. I think that's it's a low C tier. It's a solid game, but it's just a bit boring, you know? It's like the combat is fine, the world is fascinating, and the graphics are beautiful. But the combat is fine, the story has some interesting parts, but in general, I just didn't really care for it all too much. It was fine, but it just kind of slowly wears down on you. It feels like I think this game would have been a lot better if it wasn't an open world game. Because how they built the traversal system, it just didn't feel good to explore, to run around. Like, there should have been a parkour system in this. If this had a Dying Light 2 parkour system, it would be a B tier. But it doesn't, so it's a C tier. Glover, it's D tier. It's like a Steam remake of a pretty forgotten N64 platformer that has a weird atmosphere and some baffling controls. Yeah, Glover isn't very good. Golfy, B tier. This is very fun golf roguelike. Golf card building roguelike. In Curse to Golf, you play as the character, but in Golfy, you play as the ball. And it has multiplayer that I haven't tested out, or maybe the multiplayer is coming, but it's just really fun. It's just a fun roguelike. Needs a bit more content. It is in early access, but it's very fun. And then this tier, Gotham Knights. That game is shit. Absolutely fucking terrible. Combat is shit. It runs at 30 FPS, not a solid 30 FPS. The game does look good, I'll give it that. But it's just level gating after level gating after level gating after level gating. It's just the whole loop of the game is do a story mission and then go out into the world the next night and you have to do 10 randomly generated crimes to then get to the next mission. Just level gating all the way around. Brutal. GT7 S tier. GT7 got me into sim racing. I went out and I spent 300 quid on a wheel and it just feels so good. The cars are brilliant. The music is actually really nice. The sound design is fucking unbelievable. It's one of the most immersive games I've ever played. And it's also really good for newcomers. It has this license system that really teaches you the ropes of, you know, how to take wet corners, how to learn what the apex of a corner is. And yeah, I just really enjoyed the loop of learning how to be better at driving. It's very good. Absolutely amazing. Horizon. This is probably a bit contentious. Horizon's a C tier. Like, Horizon has a fascinating world and like a pretty good combat loop, but I just can't. I don't know. There's just something about it that just doesn't feel right. The open world is gorgeous, but there's nothing to do in it. The story is better than the first one, but still, Aloy isn't a character that I really like all too much. And then also Aloy looks away from, doesn't make eye contact with people. Like, she talks to the camera like this. I always say that. Really jarring. Yeah, and then the ending just wasn't satisfying. They're very clearly setting her up for a third game, but not in a good way. So, yeah. Don't really like Horizon, to be honest. Okay, High on Life. Easy B tier. It's a fun game. Simple as that. Kind of reminds me a bit of Ratchet and Clank, where the whole game revolves around some cool weapons and the guns talk to you, and it is a funny game. If you don't like Justin Roiland's comedy, then you won't like this game. But if you do like Justin Roiland's comedy, it's actually also quite a competent FPS. Like, when you get to the end with the 5 different weapons, there is like a cool little loop of, you know, doing different abilities, launching them up into the air, shooting them, and then pulling them into you with your shotgun. And yeah, we have to commend when developers make different games. Like, I mean, if you look at this list, like, there's so many games that realistically are pretty samey, but there's nothing like High on Life. And you have to commend developers for that. Next, we have KO the Kangaroo, which I think is a high C tier game. Or a low B tier game. It's a high C tier game that would be a low B tier game if I didn't get a save glitch. Apparently it's been fixed, but look, I can only give my opinion on the game that I played. And KO the Kangaroo, I got 2 save glitches actually. So, yeah. It's a fun, like, the graphics are really nice. It has like a really cheerful, really cheerful soundtrack. And it just reminded me of like a PS2 platformer, but in like a modern way. And yeah, it's fun. Very fun game. Would be a low B tier without the bugs and glitches, but it definitely has that Euro jank, which I'm used to it. I understand Eurojank. It's a part of that whole sort of development scene in Poland and places like that. But in general, pretty solid platformer. I would recommend to anybody that wants a platformer if that glitch is fixed. Next, we have Kirby and the Forgotten Land. This is a B tier game. I haven't beaten it, so I think maybe it might be an A tier game if I did beat it. But for now, it's a B tier game. It's just a very, very well made platformer. But I just don't have any like affinity for or with or to. I actually don't know what preposition is that the word you're supposed to use there. But I've no like affinity for him, so like he's a B tier. Like if that was a Mario game, it would probably be an S tier, but like I'm not gonna lie, it's because it's Kirby. I just never really liked him. And then we have KOTOR 2 on the Switch. KOTOR 2 is a great RPG that is plagued with bugs, that is in a D tier because of the bugs. Now, the original game was buggy, so maybe Aspire can only do so much, but I got a save glitch or a game-breaking bug that eventually I could fix it, but it wasn't even like a proper fix. It was basically, you know, do this to get around a certain cutscene so that the glitch wouldn't happen. So it's not even like they just fixed it. So yeah, it's a D tier. It's a really, really good RPG. Combat is a bit like meh, like it is an old style of combat, but it would be like a B tier if it wasn't so glitchy, but it just can't. And Arlo is in frame here. Okay, I think we're really starting to double up on games here. Little Gator game. If you want a chill game, Little Gator game's an A tier game. If you want a chill game, it's part Breath of the Wild, it's part A Short Hike, and it's just wholesome. It's cute, it's fun. I beat it in one sitting and had a stupid grin on my face the whole time. As a chill game, it achieves everything that a chill game should do, so it's A tier. Live Alive is a solid B tier. I'd say a low B tier, because a lot of the chapters felt quite underwhelming. It's like they could have been an extra 2 or 3 hours long. But then like the final chapter really brings the game together, and like if the whole game was like the final chapter, no joke, this would have been one of my favorite JRPGs of all time. Because the final chapter, the whole thing about Live Alive is different time periods, different characters, and then the final chapter brings them all together. And you have to go around the world and find them all and recruit them to your party. And the final chapter really is that good, but the rest of it just kind of falls a bit flat. Loopmancer, D tier. This is actually kind of like a rather high budget. Like the graphics are really nice on it. Roguelike, but the combat just didn't feel great. I literally played 2 or 3 hours of it and I had enough. It just never, the combat never felt good. It's kind of like a Dead Cells style of a roguelike, but it just never felt good. So if the combat system's not fun, then that's it done. Midnight Suns, I've played maybe 3-4 hours of this game, and if this game was just the combat, it would be an A or an S tier. But they have these life sim shit like in Fire Emblem where you have to sit down with Tony Stark and watch a movie with him, and it just ruins it. There's so much getting in the way of the fun combat that I just ended up skipping all the dialogue. So it's a C tier. Like it will be a lot higher because the combat is so fun. It has this cool card system with turn-based strategy. But yeah, Spider-Man Miles Morales PC, A tier. Spider-Man Miles Morales, I prefer over the first one because it's not as bloated. And now I can play it on a Steam Deck. Runs really well on the Steam Deck at 30 FPS. So, A tier. Next we have Modern Warfare 2. I didn't play the campaign. The multiplayer was fun, but in general I didn't like the maps. I really like how the guns feel, and I love all the different guns. But ultimately, I think the fact that I dislike the maps, it's a C tier, and I don't play Warzone, so C tier. Neon White is a C tier that very well could be an A tier. And it's because of the story. The story is fucking dreadful. It's like this visual comic, overly sexualized, like, oh, it's just like it's smut basically, and I don't like it. I really dislike it. It was just off-putting. It wasn't done well. That sort of writing and comedy can be done well, like the over-sexual stuff, but in Neon White it's not done well. It's like if you're into Japanese weeby stuff, then you'll probably be out fucking, you know, doing some dirty stuff while watching it, but while playing the game. But like the gameplay is so fucking good though, but then you get this stupid story that ruined it. I actually forgot a game on this list, but I'll talk about it. Nier Automata on the Switch. Look, Nier Automata is an S tier game, and it runs so well on the Switch. Like, it's not 60 FPS, but they did such a good, you know what, it's an S tier. You can play it in handheld, and it runs well. Just played Nier Automata. Nobody Saves the World, very, very easily an A tier game. The loop of running around this world with these funny characters, leveling up all these different, like, what would you call them? Not abilities, forms. Like, you could be a rat, you could be a mermaid, you could be a zombie, and they all have different abilities, and you're leveling them up. And then, like, you have to get the mermaid to this level and the zombie to this level to unlock something else. And it's just a fun loop that, I mean, is, yeah, it's just a solid, great indie game from Drinkbox, who make some of the best indie games ever. Ollie Ollie World, I played enough of this game to realize that it's a very, very, very good and very well made skateboarding game. It's almost like a 2D platformer skateboarding game, kind of. Maybe reminds you a bit of like 2D Sonic. But, yeah, I don't like skateboarding. So it didn't resonate with me in that way. But if you like skateboarding games, then I can easily see this being an A tier. But it is a very good game. Overwatch 2, S tier. I mean, Overwatch 1 is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, shooter ever made. Multiplayer shooter. And I think Overwatch 2 improved on the formula. I think the 5v5 makes it more frantic. It also makes team fights a lot less, let's sit behind a choke and throw 2 shields down because there's only 1 tank kind of a thing. I play this game like easily 2 hours a day, like on average. I play this game a lot and I absolutely love it. And yeah, the new characters are good too, except Soldier, and she's a bit broken. Well, she's fun to play, but if you come up against a good Soldier, you're fecked. But like, yeah, I think it improved the Overwatch formula. The monetization is not good. Like, you're not rewarded because, like, right now the Winter Wonderland thing is out, which is basically like the winter event. And in the old one with the loot box, I can't believe I'm actually saying I prefer loot boxes, but with loot boxes you would get them, was it every level or every 5 levels or something? So I could potentially get a load of the Christmas skins, but now I have to pay like 10 or 20 euro for a skin. So I do dislike that, but it's just that good of a game. Pokemon Scarlet. This is a B tier. Well, I have Violet, but that's just a picture I found. This is B tier. It's like a low B tier because of the performance. The game really does run that bad and it looks that bad, but the gameplay loop is so fun that it deserves to be a B tier. Even, like, I know we're part of the problem because we're all buying, well, I'm buying the game and Game Freak are getting away with it, but like, if you make that compelling of a loop, I don't mind sitting down, sitting there for an hour. I played this game for like 10 hours now and I will get to it more over Christmas, but like, yeah, I'll just keep chipping away at it. Very fun. And also, all the new Pokemon that I found are so cool. Like, there's one called Tandem Mouse, which is 2 mice. And then, when they evolve, they have kids and they turn into Mousehold. How cool is that? Like, you just can't get any cooler than that. So, yeah, I do. I really like that game. Ragnarok. Wait, what am I doing? Ragnarok's an S tier. Why did I even have to think about that? Yeah, Ragnarok's an S tier. The story and character performances, probably the best I've ever seen in a game. It really is that good. And then the combat is so meaty and fun with the 3 weapons. Mixing and matching, throwing your axe, throwing your spear, bringing them back in, slicing them up. So fun. And it had so many moments, like father-son moments, that just like, they just get to you. It's really a brilliant game. And I prefer it over the first one. But, yeah. Absolutely fantastic. Next, we have A Plague Tale Requiem. This is easily a B tier. I haven't beaten it, but from what I've played, it's more of a Plague Tale, and I believe A Plague Tale Innocence is probably the best AA game I've ever played. I would be reluctant to put this in an A tier because I haven't beaten it, because the story might fall flat. I'm not sure. But if the story stays true to what it is, then that's an A tier if I beat it. But right now, it's a comfortable B tier because the game looks absolutely brilliant. And it just goes to show, this game is 30 FPS, but because it's a slow-paced stealth game, it gets away with it. Gotham Knights is a fucking character action game, and it's 30 FPS. For no reason. Next, we have Roller Drome. This is easily A tier. This game... No. Roller... What did I call it? Roller Roller Drome is an S tier game. It just gets that loop of like a Tony Hawk shooter that's like, who came up with this? But they just made it so good, and the graphics, I really love the aesthetic of it. But like, it's just arcadey fun personified. Personified? Epitomized. I think that's the word I'm looking for. Roller Drome is brilliant. It's just, you just need to sit down and play Roller Drome for like 30 minutes to realize how fun it can be. And then as you try to go for the high scores, it really becomes like, oh god, this is very skillful. But like, chasing that next high score is so fun. S tier. Next we have Saints Row. Saints Row doesn't deserve to be in the Gotham Knights tier. It almost deserves to be there. Nah, fuck it, it's going. Saints Row is a Gotham Knights tier. It's not fun. It's like terrible writing. A decent, like a very okay gameplay loop that was just ruined by a really bad narrative and just a boring system of having to just level up stuff and improve your empire. It's just, yeah, it deserves to be in the Gotham Knights tier. Salt and Sacrifice is a D tier. Salt and Sanctuary is actually a really good 2D Souls-like, but Salt and Sacrifice went for this almost like Monster Hunter-esque or Terraria-esque, where you have to go back to the levels and hunt these monsters that just randomly spawn, these big bosses, like one of these guys here. And it just didn't feel good. The levels were confusing because there was no map, which I don't think inherently is a bad idea. If you don't have a map, if you can make a level so memorable like Dark Souls, you don't need a map, but you need a map in Salt and Sacrifice because it was so annoying having to navigate through the levels. And then just fighting these same enemies all the time, and it was so frustrating. If I didn't have my friend David playing with me, I would have probably thrown my PC out the door. It's not good. Shovel Knight Dig is an A tier. It's a roguelike Shovel Knight game, so it has the slick mechanics of a Shovel Knight game, but it's roguelike, and then it's also a bit like Downwell, where you have to dig down, and it's just fun. I've played a few hours of it on my Steam Deck, and I would have played more, but just as I was getting into it, I realised, or my Steam Deck broke, and I haven't gone back to it, but I will over Christmas. But Shovel Knight Dig is just an unreal and amazing roguelike that any roguelike fan should play. Next we have Shredder's Revenge, easily an A tier. I'm not like a big TMNT fan. I like them, but I watched a bit of the cartoon, played a few of the games. But this is what a beat 'em up should feel like. A modern beat 'em up. The movement doesn't feel stiff. You can dodge across a screen easy. It's just fun. It's as simple as that. I got this game for Game Explain like fucking 6 hours before the embargo. Now it's only like a 2-hour game, but I absolutely loved making the review for it because it really is just that good of a game. Like it's honestly bordering on S tier if you like beat 'em ups, which I do. But I think if this was a different beat 'em up that wasn't TMNT, since I don't have much like I don't really care about the Ninja Turtles all that much, I think it would be an S tier. But it's an A tier. Still a very good game. Would recommend it to anybody. And next we have Sifu. I think this is a C tier. I don't really get the hype around Sifu. The combat never felt 100% to me. And I think some of the systems are a bit confusing. I don't know. Yeah. It's like, it's fine. The combat system is grand. And I think maybe if I was willing to learn it, it could go into a B tier. But from what I've played, it never compelled me to want to learn it, if you get me. Like, I have no problem learning to play a difficult game. But it needs to compel me to want to play it, to get good, so then I can fully enjoy the combat system. And Sifu didn't do that for me. Skywalker Saga is like, I think it's an A tier. It's the best Lego game. They reinvented the formula. It's still like a Lego game at heart, but it gives you so much content and these fun open environments to run around in. Because I think the thing that got me eventually with the Lego games was the linearity of them. And this sort of just, refreshed the formula, and a much needed refreshment. And I just hope they do this with Lord of the Rings and other things, which I assume they will do, because I think this game sold absolutely loads. But it's the best Lego game. It's easy an A tier. Not an S tier. It's not good enough to be an S tier, but Soccer Story is I think Soccer Story is a C tier. Running around the world in Soccer Story is really fun, and the writing is funny. Nah, it's a B tier. But once you get into the actual football part, which is actually a small bit of it, arcade football games aren't fun. They've never been fun because they're just so basic. And I also got a bug, a save-breaking bug that did get fixed, and I know it got fixed because I actually got to finish the game. But nah, it's a C tier. It doesn't. Now you will notice that I assume some of these games I actually gave higher ratings. Like I might have given a game in a B tier a higher rating than a game in the A tier, but that's obviously like, you know, you get a game, you beat it, you make the review. That could be within a week, but now I've had months to mull on it and sort of think over it, so things will change over time. We have Sonic Origins, which is an A tier. I mean, I've always enjoyed 2D Sonic. I was always a bigger fan of the 3D Sonic, but this sort of brought me in and really showed me what 2D Sonic is and how good it can be. I know like there's some Sonic diehards that don't like this and don't like certain changes they did to it, but I loved it. I'm one trophy away from the platinum, which I don't think I'll ever get. But like, very, very good game and a great collection of some really good games. Next we have Soulstone Survivors. I'll put this in like a B tier. It's like it's an auto battler like Vampire Survivors, except you can dodge and you aim your attack, so it has that small bit more involvement. Like, and there's just loads of content, loads of challenges, loads of characters to unlock, loads of weapons to upgrade. So yeah, like if you like Vampire Survivors, you'll like this game. It's a very solid game. Next we have Mario & Rabbids Sparks of Hope. This is an S tier game. I mean, this was my second on my Game of the Year list for Game Explain. The first one was very good. The battling system was really engaging. But then this one, they just made the battling system actually kinetic, which is something I've never actually seen with a turn-based tactics game like this. And then exploring the world is so much more engaging than the first one. No longer are you stuck on these sort of like very blocky square environments. They're like full open maps, almost like a JRPG. And there's random encounters. The enemies are in the overworld, but there's like overworld encounters that you can run into. Loads of fun challenges, fun puzzles, fun and easy puzzles to do. And then it also proved that they can make a story. Because the first one was like, let's make a fan fiction story about someone who loves Mario and then also loves Rabbids. But this one's like, let's make our own original characters. And they proved that they could do it. So yeah, very clearly an S tier. Splatoon 3 is an A tier. It's more Splatoon, but it's just solid. Like, Splatoon is such a fun gameplay loop. And I did actually like the new weapons that they brought in. But yeah, not really much to say. I don't play the story of Splatoon. I just play the multiplayer. But very easily an A tier. Strangers of Paradise Final Fantasy Origins. This is a contentious one, but this is an A tier. A lot of people dislike the balancing, the level design, but I love the simplicity of it. It actually kind of reminds me a bit of Crisis Core, where it's you go into this level, you have this really fun combat system, you have a really fun upgrade loop of leveling up all the classic Final Fantasy jobs, mixing and matching them together. The story just doesn't give a shite. Like, at one point, the boss is like announcing who he is, like, I don't care who you are, then you just punch him, and it's like, yeah. It's just fun. It's a fun game that has a great loop, and yeah, I love that game. Next we have Stray, which I think is an A tier. Maybe, nah, I think it's a B tier. I think I reviewed Stray too highly. Not that it was like, I didn't care about the whole cat thing, like, I don't like cats, I'm not a cat person, so that wasn't the reason why I reviewed it too highly. I just think it felt different at the time, and maybe that's why I gave it such a high review. I think I think now I would bump it down. It's a very fun indie game, and it's absolutely gorgeous, and the world is actually very good. But like, the gameplay is pretty just meh. Like, there's not much to it. So it is a B tier. It's a good game. I would recommend anybody to play it if you do like them sorts of games. But it's not like an A tier where I'd say it's like a must play. Well, actually, now that I look at this A tier, there's a lot of these that like are must plays with caveats for me. So next we have Mario Strikers Battle League. Do you know what? This is a D tier, but for the meme I'm putting it in Gotham Knights tier because this game fucking shy. I realised that I went back to the Mario Strikers on the Wii and it doesn't feel very well balanced. So I didn't actually really like that game all too much on like replaying it. So yeah, this game didn't do anything much. If anything, it's probably worse. It's like the mechanics are solid, but everything else about the game is just so boring that it's just completely uninspiring. Like, realistically, it's a D tier, but it's going in the Gotham Knights tier because it just kind of disappointed me. Super Pearls of Bacon is like a C tier. Very solid 2D platformer, not really much to say about it. If you like 16-bit era 3D or 2D platformers and you want something that will actually challenge you, it is actually difficult, and the Platinum on the PS5 is really hard. But like, it's a fun game, it's very cheap as well, it doesn't ask for too much of your time. Next we have Nintendo Switch Sports, which I think is a B tier. It's just it's a fun game. There's some fun. The multiplayer is really cool, and I streamed it a bit, and I had a lot of fun. I haven't played it in a while, but it's easily a B tier. Wii Sports was just so unique at the time, and I think it's very difficult to redo that. Even though this is better, like, it feels better, the mechanics are more varied and they're more complex. It's almost like, look, you already did it. Plus, there was no golf in it at the start. I haven't actually played the golf, but yeah. Turbo Golf Racing. I put this in a B tier. Like, as a party game, it's a B tier. But I was going into Turbo Golf Racing hoping that maybe I would get into it the same way I would with Rocket League, where there's a lot of in-depth mechanics, and there probably is a lot of in-depth mechanics, but this feels more like a party game than Rocket League does. It's very fun. If you're looking for like a party game to just sit down, it's basically golf, but Rocket League. So you're driving around, you have to smack the ball, and you just have to keep driving and hitting the ball, and there's power-ups. It's a fun game. Like, it's very, very fun, but it's just not what I was looking for. If it was more sort of like a competitive game, I would give it probably an A tier because it is very fun, but it just didn't get me in there. Tiny Tina's Wonderland is A tier. It's just fun. I think it's my favourite Borderlands game, like my favourite over Borderlands 2, because I think the loop of it is very fun, and then also kind of expanding on the Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon Keep and turning it into a full game I think was a very smart idea. I think the mainline Borderlands games, even though I love them, were getting very samey. So completely changing it up, like the setting, was a very good idea. And I'm really excited if they are making Borderlands 4, which I'm not 100% sure. And Tinykin, S tier. Tinykin is like, I honestly can't get over how much I love this game. It's crazy how much I love this game. Has a lovely 2D on 3D art aesthetic. It reminds me of Toy Story 2 on the PlayStation 1, like really nostalgic. You're this little guy running around a big house, and you have to collect these Tinykin, which are like Pikmin that have different abilities. There's no combat in it. It's really chill. Yeah, I mean, just play Tinykin. It really is that good. It's as simple as that. Next, we have The Last of Us Part 1. I mean, it's The Last of Us Part 1, so it has to be the S tier. The Last of Us is an S tier game, and The Last of Us Part 1 is a better version of The Last of Us games, so it's S tier. It didn't need to be made, but, I mean, it's still fucking fantastic. Okay, we're starting to loop up here a bit now. I'll push these down. Next, we have Triangle Strategy, which I think this is similar to Midnight Suns, but I think I'll put it in the B tier. So Triangle Strategy, I've played maybe 5 to 10 hours of it, but a lot of it is story, and the story is it is interesting. It's like this whole like political thing of different kingdoms battling, and going to dinners with different lords and ladies and all that. And then when you get into the combat, it's so fun, but there's just so much story in between the combat that I think the pacing was ruined a bit. So I would give it a B, because it was just so slow that I couldn't get into it. If it had slightly less story and the cutscenes weren't as long and there was more gameplay in the first 10 hours, I probably would have really gripped me, but nah, unfortunately it didn't. Next we have Tunic. I didn't beat this game, so I'll give it a B tier. But what Tunic does is, it's basically a Zelda kind of game, but it has this in-game manual that's like an old NES or SNES manual that you have to basically find all the missing pages and fill it out so you can learn how to play the game. And that idea, I don't know why, I just don't understand how games didn't come up with that before, but it's so charming, it's so compelling, the game looks gorgeous, and it's definitely a game I will go back to and beat, but I just haven't beaten it yet. Next we have Turbo Overkill, easily a B tier. It's in early access, but what I've played of it, I think it was the first 2 levels out of like 5 or something. It's just fun. It's a Doom style kinetic FPS, and you have a chainsaw on your leg, so when you slide you just rip people apart. It has a really cool sort of Doom-esque modern aesthetic, so it's that low poly old PC graphics but looks modern, And it's just really fun. I can't wait for the rest of the game. And when the rest of the game comes out, I will review it. I'll review the rest of the game, but yes. Need for Speed Unbound is a C tier. Driving mechanics are solid. I really like the new direction on the art. You see the way the sort of cartoony on the wheel, the cartoon effects on the wheels. It's really good. It's not overbearing. But ultimately, I felt very unrewarded playing the game. I played it for 10 hours and I had like 3 cars. Like I was stuck with 1 car pretty much for the first 10 hours. It has a cool like day and night loop where you go out and you complete missions and then you increase your heat and then you get money. And if you get caught, or to bank the money, you have to go back to your garage, which then starts the next night or the next day. And if you get caught, you lose all the money. So it's kind of like a risk reward system. But the payouts for things are really, really terrible. And I just felt unrewarded. So yeah, it's a C tier. Vampire Survivors, easily an A tier. It's just fun. It's like one of them games you look at. It's like, how is this game so popular? It's like €3. Just buy it and play it and you'll realise how good it is. Next we have Will You Snail. Easily a B tier. It's just like really funky platformer where you're this snail and there's this rogue AI that reacts to you. And it's a mechanic I haven't really seen before in a platformer. So it's like little rooms, almost like Celeste, where you go into a room, you have to beat the room, and then there's a checkpoint. But this AI speaks to you the whole time, and he's really funny, but also he reacts to how you play. So he like preemptively puts spikes where he thinks you're going to jump, or he preemptively aim lasers to where he thinks you're going to move. And it's just a fun, like it is, it's great. I really enjoy Will You Snail, actually. Yeah, Will You Snail's an A tier. Xenoblade 3, easily a B tier. I haven't beaten it, so I can't go any higher than that. But it's more Xenoblade. It's just, this happened to me with both Xenoblade 1 and 2. That basically, I played like 10 hours of them and then fell off. And then went back to them like a couple of months later and then just fell in love with them and beat them. That's going to happen with Xenoblade 3. I just don't know when. There's one more game that I don't have a picture of, and it's Hellpie, which is a 3D platformer, kind of like a grotesque 3D platformer. I would put that in the A tier. It's a really good 3D platformer. Like, the mechanics are really slick, and it's also very unique. So yeah, put that in the A tier. But there we have my ultimate game tier list. I really, really appreciate you watching. This has been a long video. And let me know if you agree. There has to be a game in here that you're like, how is that in this tier? Or this should have been in that tier. Let me know in the comments down below. Enjoy your Christmas or your holidays, whatever you celebrate. There will be shorts going up over the next like 2 weeks. I'm taking a bit of a break. And then I'll be back in January, hopefully reviewing even more games. So thank you for watching. See you all in the next video.